Welcome, everybody, to the Brick by Bit podcast, a place to jumpstart some thinking and discuss the real impacts of digital design and construction. I am your host, Rich De Palma, and you are listening to Episode 3, Fit It In to Fit It Out, Digital Design and Construction for Retail Fit-Out Projects. Welcome again, everybody, to the Brick by Bit podcast. This is episode 3, and the topic really for today is looking at digital design and construction in fit-out projects, specifically retail fit-out projects. Just a reminder that Brick by Bit is brought to you by DPW Digital Construction. We provide digital design and construction services to all industry stakeholders. You can get in touch with us at contact@dpw.digital. In terms of Brick by Bit, let's not forget, we can visit the Brick by Bit podcast website at brickbybitpodcast.com. Email there is contact@brickbybitpodcast.com. The Instagram, Twitter is @brickbybit. We're also on YouTube, so you can watch the episodes on YouTube. And we have our technical training videos at patreon.com/brickbybit. where you can visit there and kind of go through some of the technical training content that we have available on a subscription basis. And don't forget, on all platforms, however you're listening to this podcast, please like and subscribe. It gives us an idea of the content that is interesting to you people, as well as supports the podcast in general. The topics we're going to cover today, like we said, is focused in on fit-out projects, and the application of digital design and construction, and specifically geared towards retail fit-out projects. So we're going to look at kind of the current state of BIM, digital design construction, in retail fit-out projects. Then we look at kind of some of the issues that the digital design and construction can help with fit-out projects. Provide then some advice to different approaches or an approach towards the developing an implementation plan for digital design and construction in retail fit-out projects. So this time I'm here with a co-host here. This is Javier Matarrubia. He is a digital design and construction specialist at DPW Digital Construction. He's an architect, with specific experience in fit-out projects. Again, really well versed in retail fit-out projects. He recently completed a master's in BIM, where the retail fit-out projects has featured in his master's thesis.
Thanks, Richard. So basically I was working in that industry for a few years, and I realized that there are really lack of knowledge about digital construction and design, BIM, and all these kind of workflows and process. And at that point, I was also doing the master, and I took the advantage to research more in deep why, reasons behind, and also how can we start implementing all these sorts of not new tools, because they were already there, no? But why they are not using and how we can take advantage of them. No?
Yeah. So look, Javier, just so we're all on the same page, what really constitutes a fit-out project? Again, a retail fit-out project.
So a retail fit-out project, at the end of the day, is a space, usually an existing or a new building, that a client want to change the use or want to convert, and at the end want to do a really specific project, refurbish that unit, and create a social space for the people. So the big issue here is usually they are a really fast track project that happen really quick and have a specific requirement under a brand, and usually have a really a good piece of standardization, keeping the concept of a brand. And this is why it's so specific, and also why the digital design and construction can help.
So you mentioned a couple of things about kind of potentially where digital design and construction can help retail fit out project, and we discussed, we'll get that in a bit more detail. But just before we get into that, we've had a few conversations. And like you mentioned there in your introduction, there doesn't seem to be a kind of a huge amount of adoption of digital design and construction processes and technologies within the retail fit out sector. What are your experiences? I know, as a former retail fit out architect, what would be kind of your experiences, kind of, seeing how much is being used, but also kind of a bit of research that you might have done while completing that master's?
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, funny part of the thing is only few famous brands in the world are using this digital construction design workflows techniques. And I can mention a few. I have not worked with them. But when you do a quick search in internet, or also friends of friends, and they talk about, it's like Starbucks, WeWork, but then I probably cannot mention any others big companies in the retail sector that at the moment they are implementing BIM or digital design or a broad concept. So this is one thing, and the other is, when I was doing my dissertation, I found also a really few papers on the database, few keywords, and it's really strange because at the moment all people are in the construction sector are speaking about the digital construction being implementing new workflows, but for the fit out, it's really a short amount of information on the market.
Okay, and what do you think that is? Like, what kind of, any kind of specific insights into why we don't think that maybe that retail fit out projects have adopted digital design and construction?
So based on my experience, when I was in contact with the different director of famous brands, they are not aware of that can be used digital design and construction in their companies. And it's like, no, this is for a big project. No, this is, we don't have time to implement, or we are doing the things in this way, and why we need to change now. So it look like a lack of knowledge from the executive team on these companies, and this is on the client side. But then when we go in deep and we see some competitors, or we try to find an architect that work in this project, or medium big firms that work in retail fit out project, you can see some on the website and the service that they offer, but then it's all generic, and you cannot really understand what will be the benefit if I hire them to provide these services as a client. So this combination of both things is now making a gray area where people from the fit out and retail sector don't understand, and they don't see a benefit.
Okay, and then when you say the executive team, that would be the design team working for the client, or is it for some, like, so where does the executive team fit in with, say, maybe the local team?
So I mean the executive team, like the executive team of directly the client. The client is not aware, and anybody is teaching them or showing the advantage.
Okay, I love that. So potentially we have there's a bit of a disconnect in the communication, where we have designers that have certain capabilities, but then their clients aren't necessarily 100% aware of those capabilities and how that can potentially benefit them. So they just go,
yeah,
why do we need it? Don't need it.
And then also in the middle of the chain, that you have usually the project managers that are the link between the client and the design team. And also there are this connection of all of these things, and probably a kind of a lack of capabilities in all the chain at the end of the day.
In the way as well. And then kind of any kind of other maybe project specific items let's say from the team perspective, but any kind of excuses maybe that maybe brought up in terms of things that happen with the project.
Yeah, so a fit-out project usually have a lot of pressure, and you have a short amount of time to complete the project from start to finish, and usually this is one of the excuses, like we don't have time to implement this. Usually the procurement process in this kind of project is 2-4 weeks. So the general contractor say, no, we cannot implement digital construction and design workflows because we don't have the time to prepare and to be ready. It's true, yes, no, but it's at some point someone say, hello, we are going to do it. Okay, the first project is going to be tough and probably it's going to be delayed, but then due to all the standardization, the client is going to receive a benefit, and also the general constructor is going to need less resources. So this is the excuse, but
okay. So they were coming from both sides then. So kind of you would have mentioned there that from the client side there's a bit of a lack of awareness. So then they're not mandating or providing kind of guidance, for their requirements related to digital design construction, if they have any at all, which most of the time it sounds like they don't. And then from the contractor side, it's not seeing the value proposition for them on the project. So you have a client that doesn't necessarily want to do it or know what it is, and then you have contractors and even I'd say other places on the supply chain like the design team as well, that potentially isn't seeing the benefit for themselves, not seeing the benefit for the client. The client's not seeing the benefit, so therefore it doesn't happen on typically on projects. So look, we mentioned a couple of things before. We might repeat them again here, but there's risks, there's challenges associated with all projects. But if we kind of hone in on some specific ones for retail fit outs, could you kind of maybe expand on some of those challenges and risks that might be there, and then offer up some potential solutions where digital design and construction can help make those items?
So one item that come into my mind can be like the standardization. So the nature of a retail project usually is like a brand, famous brand that is extended across the globe or in a certain region, say Europe. And then each store has similar items, like similar furniture or similar design, similar storefront, certain elements that recognize as a brand. But then when you go to the construction of this store, there are nothing of this standardization. So every time that a new store coming to the line, the designer needs to review the client requirement. They need to review again the furniture that is going to be implemented. Sometimes because you have different design teams doing different stores for the same brand, but at the end of the day, there are solutions for all of that. No? You can centralize all this information in a database, and this is where digital design construction come into a place. So this is one aspect, one challenge, but then the solution that the digital design construction can solve.
Okay, so in other words, we might have kind of situations where the information that's required for objects that are typically standardized on those projects, that information is scattered. And then from project to project isn't being kind of collected, managed, shared in a similar way. And that potentially leads to deviations and gaps in information, or if something goes missing that is important for the project.
Yeah, and also I will add that the turnover in an organization will be critical because how at the moment is organized is someone know really well the brand or someone know really well a specific project, and if that person left, who is going to take that information or who can continue with the same precision or the same? So then that individual knowledge will be lost. And this, at the end of the day's time, cost associated and risk.
Yeah, I mean, and one thing I kind of just picked up there, that why this could be a bigger risk on retail fit out projects is because of that standardization. That if that standardization knowledge is lost, well, that's a big scope of work that now needs to be kind of retracked. Where even whenever a resource leaves, there's kind of a knowledge management issue. And there's a risk associated with it. But if it's from project to project, say, there's kind of, say, a lot of bespoke work done on the projects. But if everything's standardized and then that knowledge base about the standardized items goes, now there's a big kind of knock-on impact onto the current and the future projects, related to that standardized furniture layout or object as such.
Installation instructions, or for example, you have the same furniture, the same kind of table with the same power requirements, and then every time that on site this piece of furniture needs to be installed in the same way. But then that knowledge is not in a communal place. What happened?
So it's re-research the product, make sure that we're doing this correct. And again, like you said, it's time. Yeah.
So currently at the moment is majority of the time emails, and the manufacturer send the email back, and then another person requests the information, and then another person requests the information, and at some point it's lost.
You mentioned before about kind of the really condensed programs.
Yeah.
Could you kind of maybe kind of expand on that, where potentially digital design can help alleviate some of the risks associated with really short and strict, and even why is maybe the first question is, why are those programs so tight? The reasoning behind it. And then in addition to that, is there any kind of areas where you see that digital design and construction can help?
So usually they're really tight, because the client usually led the unit. Sometimes they own the unit, but generally they led the unit. So this is the start of the constraint. Then the second constraint is the opening date. So they are like a marketing team that set up a open date for a specific store, for a specific region. So from that day, you start working backward and try to set up a realistic date that the project can be completed. But then, because it's a really short amount of time, you need to mitigate the risk of any RFI that will come in the future. So you should mitigate the number of RFI. And I think digital design construction can help, because all the information will be in one place, is scheduled, and they are synchronized between drawings, design information, and the piece of data. While in the traditional way, there are some drawings, there are some elevations, some floors, plans, some data, and then when you are on site and start building the project, start to be conflicts around the information. So this is why, if and only if digital design construction is implemented with a proper workflows and from the start, can help.
Okay, so again, just kind of summarize that point. Because we have such a tight deadline, and they're hard deadlines because they're related to the clients, the shop owners' requirements for getting up and running and getting cash through the door. In addition to the letting requirements, because they're starting to pay rent on a particular unit. They need that unit to make money. That's the window for the fit out construction. And I think that's a really good point, that any sort of knock on, any sort of delay to that, that's not even talking about kind of a mistake, which I imagine kind of is another item. But before we even get to those types of issues, if we can limit the number of questions coming back and allowing that contractor to go at it, as hard as they can for to achieve that program, big risk mitigation factor that we can have. And if it's down to the coordination of information, that can be helped by digital design and construction. surely that's positive. The kind of for that.
I will see also that another benefit will be like after the second project, third project, you start taking all the data of how long took to deliver the furniture from whatever place, China to Europe, and how long was the installation of the gypsum, how long was the installation of the office, and because it's going to be the same office, all this time data can also implement it as a part of the digital design construction workflows. So then you will have a more realistic programs that the marketing department can work with this data, So it's a process that also is not like from the day one digital design construction is going to be the fantastic tool. It's a process that needs time, but then eventually will work.
That's the most interesting part of that whole comment, I think, was you bringing up the marketing department. Because it's having construction related information that then can be transferred back up to the client's executive chain of sending out the requirements, going from construction to marketing. I think is a really powerful point. And kind of again demonstrating the power of having good information, and maybe not even the primary benefits of that information, the secondary benefits of that information can then lead to big gains for clients. And like I said, big gains, I guess, kind of, the more you understand the construction process at that level, the more that they can, like you mentioned, their plan and reduce risk, and that's ultimately what it's all about for projects is reducing risk. So again, we talked about kind of the executive team and then having their design team. And we're talking about big brands. We're talking about people that have units scattered all over the world. Does that produce any kind of issues on projects?
Yes, sure. The first issue is the local regulation, because at the end of the day, that unit is in a certain place, can be a city center, and they have a local planning, and at it's in a specific country with local building regulations. So usually it's create a lot of headaches, because the client wants, say, a corridor between the furniture with certain size, a certain space of the back of house, but then they need to deal with the sprinkler heads, that they are a certain level, and then they cannot fit all the space that they need for storage, and then to sell all this product, the revenue, and again, marketing department and owner management, all these sort of things. But then, again, the digital design construction can help, because they can say as an example that one object, like in the door, can have a declared space for the opening for this specific country, and then start building a library where your business operates. And with this library, your designers, your interior designers that work for the client, will speed up, and they will have more accurate design, and they will fundament the decisions.
Okay, and then would that localization impact the design constraints as well, or even help communicate the design constraints of a particular unit? Just thinking if there's a particular unit and you're trying to facilitate a certain population, a certain bunch of customers, is there any kind of scope within digital design construction that can kind of help owners and facility and the managers kind of understand what constraints they may have from that perspective?
I say yes. So basically, the owners sometimes they look at the country as a profit or the target market, but they don't understand well the construction constraints. And then if you have a database or object with information that include building limitations, then they can understand the risk that they are taking. Say, for example, if you take an old building against a new building, and you have that information, you can ascertain, okay, the rent is cheap, but then will be another cost associated to that I cannot have enough storage due to the building limitations. So yeah, I say yes.
Okay. The just kind of anything from maybe like an automation perspective, in terms of digital design technology, and workflows, anything from that might actually help for fit out projects.
Yes, for example, when you are designing a store in the traditional way, you have to produce a ceiling plans, construction floor plans, a bunch of documentation that you produce one by one. Was not like a pencil style, but because you use the computer, but similar approach, no? But now with the digital design construction, you will bring the consistency. Why I say the consistency? Because when you are drawing a floor plan, at the same time you are drawing an elevation, and at the same time that you implement the data in a floor plan, say a number of chairs or number of sockets associated to the wall, you are providing this data to your elevation. You are providing this data to your MEP consultant, and all at some point is in one place. No mistakes, no conflict of information, and at the end of the day, your contractor is not going to go back to you and say, "Oh, here say one thing, and in another drawing is different," and then the specification that coming directly from the manufacturer say different thing. You avoid this, so then you will keep the client happy.
Look, would you have any kind of experience where the either spatial constraints, or kind of visual constraints, kind of that were produced in say traditional 2D world that ended up causing problems on projects later on, that the information, because it was flat, didn't provide enough information for the correct decisions to be made?
Of course, there are always some anecdote to talk about. No? I remember one time, our team didn't took in consideration one beam, and was there in flat, but the height was not correct, and then the interior designers that were related to the client, they didn't understand well the flat line, and then coming an issue because they design a fantastic false ceiling with a nice structure, but then not fit, and need to rework, change slightly the design of the store, and then anybody can notice, no, that the time was increased, a lot of meetings, go forward emails. This is also time. It's not only you have a problem, of course you can sort it, and then you will have a fantastic design. But what happened with the time in this process?
And would you need as a fit out designer, would you need to kind of test certain things out spatially, say in a project that maybe to help the client understand?
So first thing is when you design a store, you need to take in consideration your back of house more or less at the beginning, because it's going to give you the capacity to sell product and to make profit. So the amount of rack or the amount of storage that you will have will impact directly the front sales area. So this is the first thing. So sometimes with a flat design, you cannot ascertain exactly the volume and the design limitations. While with a 3D digital model, you can move around, test, also see how it's going to be transferred your product to the rack, how it's going to be used the space, and how all will comply with the regulations. Then if we move to the front area, similar happen. You want to maximize the space. The majority of the client, not all, depending again, style, brand, concept, want to fit the maximum amount of furniture as possible. to keep the client looking around and buy more things. But sometimes it's not possible due to structure limitations, due to heights. And if you have all in a 3D model where you can navigate, you clearly see these limitations. Also, they move further to the shopfront area. How is going to be seen your store from the mall, or how is going to be seen the store from the street, and what is going to be seen behind these stands? So sometimes you design all in floor plan, and then when the open day, you need to hide some furniture because was not expected the results.
Then anything else from kind of say a functional visual perspective that could be tested?
So visually there are a few things. One that is really important is the lights. I know that big brands have their own software and they do looks calculation levels. But sometimes the majority of the time, they use like generic furniture that they're really close to the client specification, but they're not the same. So they are a point that you have your digital model, the interior designers are happy with them, and then you hand over to the lighting specialist and can test in real time what happened, share the experience with the interior designer, share the experience with the client, and say, okay, that story is going to work really good.
One other aspect I was kind of just thinking about, and again, I don't know if you have experience with it, is maybe things like, say, security camera positions or items like that, where like you mentioned about kind of opening the shop front and then not realizing that you have to hide furniture from a customer point of view and customer aesthetics. But from a security point of view, does this bit of furniture block a key view? Or
sometimes happen. But only not only that, is like suddenly the specialist say you need 10 cameras, and your design is I don't want 10 cameras. I want a more an intrusive space where the customers walk around and they don't feel seen. So where is the benefit now of DDC? So DDC can test and try to reduce the camera also height, and you can work around your store and understand, okay, that is going to work if I remove these 4 cameras and it's not needed anymore. And step back to your security guy specialist and say, no, it's not needed, and you can justify why it's not needed. So open a discussion.
Yeah, so it's a case of that. Maybe going back to maybe the marketing team or something like that is basically saying that in order for this space to generate the volume of profit that we're looking for, one thing they would have known is customer sentiment relative to, are they being watched, from a security perspective?
And then feel the store there. So you can translate that, say the feeling, that other values. That's probably when we start this conversation, not on the table, but yeah, true. Other values that digital design construction can take into consideration compared to a flat paper with no sentimentals at all.
Yeah, so the 2D, the information that you're getting from that process, and just by going through it and testing, not only has implications for the direct implication of how many security cameras do we need, but also has, well, if we're limiting that, we can then use that information to satisfy other aspects of the client's business, to ensure that they're producing the right feeling within the space that they want to have to generate profits. Which, again, that's a couple of good examples of where the construction information can feed back into kind of organizational requirements. Okay, so let's say we've convinced somebody at this stage that digital design and construction can help reduce risk on their retail fit out projects. What would be kind of some considerations that someone would need to take into account in their approach towards implementing?
So I guess depend of the but depend on the project that they are involved. This is when we should question in what projects are you involved at the moment, no? And depend of that, you need to analyze and stop and think about what DDC can do for me. Because sometimes, again, come back to the companies that they are on the market, that they try to sell generic services, but you don't understand what is going to be for your project, for a specific project. No? So say, for example, if we speak about a Cell and Core project, sometimes someone is going to say, you need a laser scan, the last technology in the market. And sometimes, yes, it will be beneficial, but sometimes no. The cost involved and the things that you need to do your project is not needed. And with a laser tape, normal survey will be fine. So it's due to the requirement and to understand what you will need and understand how the digital construction can help you.
Okay, so say on a retail fit out project, it'd be understanding the context of the space, therefore kind of getting the survey information for the retail unit, the shell and core of that unit. The
information that is already there, because sometimes it's depending on what project you're working. If you are in a big commercial unit, probably they have already some digital information, and it's not they are going to have soon. And it's because this is the reality. So when we're working on the project, the majority of the project at the moment is still on 2D paper-based thing, but you clearly see that they start to require more models or digital surveys. The problem is then anybody's using. Is the other side of this thing. But then, if we move to another kind of project, say demolition to Cell and Core, will be really useful that you record all the demo that need to be carried out, because then when a subcontractor coming, it's not going to be a misunderstanding that that wall, I don't see that wall, or the height of the wall, I only want to keep half of the wall, and then when you go to the stores, the demo, the full unit. And sometimes you want to reuse a part, or sometimes you want to keep the far-rated wall separated certain areas. So this is where also DDC can help.
Okay. The kind of, if we're talking about kind of say, would there be a potential difference if it was a new building or an old building that was being used for the units?
It's a yes. Usually when it's a new building, have a really clear structure, a modern construction system, and this will help to build really quick a digital model using actually a laser tape, because they are standardized. Usually they are standardized elements that are in the market, and you can reproduce it really easy. While in an old building will be more complicated and require more amount of effort at the start. But then as the project goes, you can achieve more or less the same level of benefit of your DDC.
Okay, and then, like say for like kind of focus a bit on design and kind of even kick off of projects kind of at the moment. The lots of different stakeholders involved in a fit out project. A lot of times I'd say that they're probably smaller, kind of contractors, the smaller designers maybe for doing some of the more local things. Would be any benefit, do you think, for those stakeholders, those project stakeholders, on a project?
Will be a benefit, but it's us as a specialist to find and to show them what can be the benefit. So say, for example, a Tyler will be asking himself why I need digital design, or what means for me, and for him will mean like a small thing, like provide the specification of the type that he's installing, or providing the information about they are hiding, say, a service and the client is not aware. So provide these small things is the start point for a Tyler. Or say for a painter. What mean for a painter? I only need to go to the store, paint, and I say why I need to be involved in the digital side. So yes, and they need to be involved in the digital side. How? Provide again a specification of the paint color, the finish, because then if the client want to hire another painter at later stage to repair a damage or something, they need to know exactly what had happened before. It needs to be a record. So small things can be done and implemented on the digital side, despite they are a small contractor, despite they are a small work. They are not a small work that they are not justify digital implementation.
Okay. That just kind of say from the team perspective, the team management kind of perspective. Any thoughts on that? In terms of how it's structured or what team members kind of benefit the most.
So based on my experience, the project manager are a key point on the fit-out project, because at the end of the day, they are all the time following the project. So at some point, they basically when this kind of projects start, the client and the interior designer, sometimes the client and the interior designer work directly for in the client company. They provide the design to an architectural design team. The architectural design team prepare the drawings, and then only come back to when there are enough RFI or some questions. But the project managers, they are all the time there.
Mm-hmm.
So because the client contact the project manager, and then the project manager organize all these things from the design team, construction, handover, and they are the key point. But despite of that, I have found that there are a lot of lack of knowledge of digital design in their side. So this is a key factor that need to be taken in consideration.
Well, so we say the kind of just another way of putting it is that the project manager, because it's such a central role on fit out projects and the link back to the client, that it's critical for them to have that knowledge base to provide the client with the reasons that digital design construction can help,
and pull the chain,
and then push the chain. Yeah. So it's going to go in both directions, kind of going up from an education point of view, and then coming down the chain to make sure that what's required is met, and obviously met within that tight program. The kind of one thing I think kind of comes up, and I would imagine the same thing comes up with retail fit out projects, is how much is this going to cost me, kind of a thing to implement digital design and construction. And kind of again, we've had this conversation a few times on it, but I'm still sticking by the kind of the premise that if we're using digital design construction methods, processes, procedures, all that technology, and we're producing the exact same thing, there wouldn't necessarily be. I wouldn't see a reason for a cost uplift. So if we're asked to produce, if we're producing apples from a traditional point of view, and then we're just using digital design and construction to produce apples from that point of view, the cost implications should be washed. And I can even kind of understand someone even making an argument, rightly or wrongly, or correctly or incorrectly, kind of saying that, well, just because it's different and new, that there's a certain amount of extra work that needs to go into it. Or on the flip side, well, if this technology is so fantastic, surely it should cost me less. Again, I think there's reasons. I think that it's closer to being a wash than either of those than those arguments would suggest. But at the same time, if we're offering if additional information, additional services, are being offered on foot of that digital design construction that benefit the project. So now it's not apples being created, it's apples and a bit of an orange being created. Well, then there would be kind of a cost uplift associated with the additional information, additional effort that goes into producing the additional information and providing the additional services. Would that be kind of would you see kind of cost being kind of a barrier that comes up when people talk about implementing digital design and construction for retail projects? And again, would you kind of similarly think the kind of the argument that if it's the same, well then the cost surely would be the same, but if it's different, well then that's a conversation that needs to be had.
Yes. So, as you say, this is the same product, should cost the same, unless the company would like to charge for the license, because it can be a little bit more expensive, the software, or would like to charge you a little bit more because they don't have the capabilities and they try to upskill and with the budget use as an excuse. But if you go with a team that they have the capabilities and a team that know what digital construction means, it should be the same.
Mm-hmm.
Unless they say, okay, for this little bit more money, you will have like 30% more of benefit. So then, it will cost a little bit more, but at the end of the day, you have better product and probably as a client costs a little bit less, or you can start doing a profit earlier on the project. So then it's going to be more benefit in the long term.
Okay, so it's other areas where there's additional benefit is where
the other side is because there are a lot of things involved of this change, and in this kind of project, can be the case that it's the same amount of money, but because the amount of work is different between each team with the digital design, it's split in different way, and it's where need to be looked not in a traditional way. It's not in the digital way, and understand that if you are doing less work due to this constraint, your fees need to be low. But the other thing that with the traditional way was doing less work, now is doing more, need to be taking the different part and make more profit for this thing. So will change, but at the end of the day, the total amount of cost of the project should be the same.
Look, I think one of the arguments also for that, again, that acts sometimes as a barrier to digital design and construction implementation is kind of the effort curve. Kind of where, in terms of the project lifecycle, the effort is it front loaded, is it back loaded? So typically speaking, we're talking about effort being front loaded a bit, particularly from the design point of view, and the information generation, collation, coordination, all that's happening. Again, for the benefit of later aspects of the project. Would that be the same on retail fit out projects? And kind of looking at more of an opinion question as well would be does it matter given the duration of the programs?
Usually the fit out projects have a specific stage, similar in a certain manner with the office or big buildings, but they're really specific. So say, for example, you start with the survey, then design, then technical design, and then construction phase. Where I have experience is the real benefit is when the design change happen. And unfortunately, happens so frequently. So with the traditional way to do things, in this kind of effort curve, you spend a lot of time so in the design stage, tender stage, but then usually at tender stage when happens the design change. And again, sometimes create a really big effort. All the resources need to work in that specific project to sort the new change that coming from the client. Again, from a mistake with the building regulation that was not properly read or not fully spatially understand. But then when you go to the DCF effort curve, the amount of work when a design change happen is dramatically reduced, and is where you will see the real benefit.
And I think maybe it's worth also highlighting there that if we go back to one of our earlier points, that we have a hard deadline date that this needs to be done, because if not, if we miss Christmas, that the client's got a problem, right? So if the real benefit is attacking those risk items, we talked about RFIs, now we're talking about design changes. That's the main, but that's where the real reward can be, is that those items that can potentially really negatively impact the program. If we're knocking those on the head, or at least mitigating, those impacts a good bit, the client, the marketing team, the contractor, everybody's getting big benefits from that. That initial spike is there, but those changes then really can be really
bad. I remember one project that was in an airport. So imagine an airport that you need a security pass, certain days that your workers can go, a lot of paperwork done, and then a design change. So not only you are going to miss Christmas, you're going to miss Christmas and probably springtime.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why the digital design construction can a critical project. That Retrofit project can be critical as well, because it can be in a specific location like airport, ports, or infrastructure that you don't imagine. When you fly, you see there, but
yeah, if they miss it, it becomes a big issue. For that, bigger than maybe potentially normally, given security constraints and requirements. I'm gonna lump two things together now. We've talked previously about standardization, and we've talked previously about having access to information. So if we smash those two together in terms of reuse of information and reuse of or use of lessons that have been learned on projects, kind of where do you think kind of that fits in, or does it fit in with fit out retail projects?
So usually in a fit out retail project, you have similar back of house area with similar kind of office, similar tables, or same table, same tea unit, similar fridge. Because a retail project fit out, go to that detail or level. So this is where the standardization taking in place. I understand that some brand that will see this conversation say, okay, but my project is a bespoke project because we are unique. And okay, probably still some benefit. I see some benefit, but the majority of the brand, they have a lot of standardization. So if you walk to a store, you will see the same items. So say, for example, now that things have opened recently in Ireland, or Decathlon. So if you go to any Decathlon in Europe, you see the same rack system, the same kind of width corridor, the same kind of marketing strategy. So all this standardization for sure can benefit from the digital construction.
Yeah. So then, in terms of digital design and construction implementation, then on those projects, if as a client and maybe the project manager, leading this, will be able to say that, okay, if we go off and we create these data-rich digital objects, we then can provide those to our design team, which are then for that first project, there's a bit of investment that's there.
Yes.
But for all the future projects that we're potentially using these same items over and over and over again, we're saving time from our team, and then again, by default, reducing the risk on the project programs for that. I think we kind of the one about the lessons learned kind of really goes back to one of the first things we talked about, which was having that centralized location. So really it goes back to kind of a bit of technology, but mainly the process for capturing information, reusing information, storing it, and then ultimately sharing it out. Sharing it out afterwards. So from a lessons learned perspective, it kind of goes back even to the initial things of having that initial information all in the same place, going through the project, and then at the end, bring that information so that it can be then reused and accessed, commonly across the multiple projects in the future.
Yes, and also I would say that access should be provided to the client, and the client should keep all this information to themselves, because sometimes that happens is company change, a company fall, something go wrong, but at the end the brand is still there.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this, at the end of the day, should come from the client, and the client should host and promote it, because it's going to be the real benefits.
Well, look, Javier, I think that was a great conversation. I think provided a lot of insights specifically into retail fit-out projects. Like a lot of the principles again, as we talked about previously, are applicable across all sorts of different projects. But I think it was very good to kind of focus in on the specific retail fit out type of project, and then kind of look and demonstrate through your experience and your research into the topic that there is real benefits that really target those main risks that are associated with those projects. So look, in summary on what we discussed today, we looked at kind of the current perceptions of digital design and construction in the fit out market. We looked at some challenges that retail fit out projects undertake, and the risks associated with those, and how digital design and construction can help mitigate those. And then provide some high level considerations for anyone that wants to implement digital design construction on retail fit out projects. Again, please like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening to it. Again, we can be contacted on email at contact@brickbybit.com. Sorry, contact@brickbybitpodcast.com. Twitter, Instagram @brickbybit. The website for the podcast is brickbybitpodcast.com. We're available on YouTube. And if you'd like to look at the technical training videos, visit patreon.com/brickbybit, where we have a host of different technical videos that you can subscribe to. Thanks again for listening, and we'll talk to you real soon.